Greetings all. This is Lisa Conley at Child Care Resources in Seattle with Kaleidoscope Play and Learn. Welcome to this great webinar that we're going to be having today, presented by our colleague Fran Williams, who's at Child Care Action Council in the Olympia-Lacey area, and that organization also happens to be the Child Care Aware of Washington Olympic Peninsula office as well too. So I am really pleased to have Fran join us, and I got a preview of what she's going to share with us today about how to incorporate science, technology, math, those kinds of concepts into your play and learn groups. And she'll give us some background on how children learn about those ideas as they develop, and then things that you can do in your group to promote that kind of learning, as well as ways to talk with family members about how children learn about science and numbers and math, and then ideas for what they can do at home. So I'm really pleased to present Fran, and I will give her give over the webinar. So here we go. So Fran.
Hi, so can you see my screen and everything? Are you there, Lisa?
Yeah, I'm not seeing your screen yet, but let me double check.
Okay.
How about other folks? There it is. Okay.
Okay.
We got it.
I'm trying to get to full screen. So my name is Fran Williams, and this is my first webinar, but I really love this topic, so it should be a lot of fun. And I have been attending all of the webinars that Kaleidoscope Play and Learn put on, and I have been so happy with them. They are just so cool. So I'm going to try to find the full view here for the slideshow. So I do run a Kaleidoscope Play and Learn group, and I am here at the Child Care Action Council and Child Care Aware of Olympic Peninsula. And I have worked with bringing math and science into my groups, and I also teach other people regarding math and science as well too. I have a master's degree, but it's not in physics, so you don't have to worry. I am a teacher and a parent, and I have a master's in counseling. And what I'm really out of this presentation today is that you'll see that you too can add math and science to, and you already are doing it. So you'll be able to see how you can add math and science to your presentations at the playgroup. And I'm still showing that my is not full screen. Is that what you see, Lisa?
That's right, but that's okay. If you can't fix it, it shows up anyway.
Okay. Here, now I feel better.
Okay, there you go.
Let me move this to, okay. So today we're going to do an overview of STEM, and we're going to find and provide tips for incorporating STEM activities into Kaleidoscope Play and Learn groups, and provide modeling tips for information to share that information with parents and other caregivers that come to your group, and then also Lisa's going to talk about resources that they hope to have and already do have to support your role as a Kaleidoscope Play and Learn facilitator. So anytime you have a question, just go ahead and type it in. Lisa's going to be taking care of that part for me, and so that will be great. Not sure what that meant, but hopefully we won't close. So what is STEM? STEM, I'm sure you've been hearing about in the news. It's a new catchphrase that many people are using. And I know that some people also add arts to STEM and make it STEAM. So you might also hear the terminology called STEAM. And that's arts, not in terms of crafts, but in terms of creativity and being artistic. So yes, STEM is science, is the S, and that's knowledge. That's things that you can know. Technology is the method, the techniques and the materials. Engineering is applying that technology to devices. And math is the use of number, order, and patterns to describe things. You probably have gone through the situation where something doesn't work. So you are using STEM to problem solve, to try to find out why that coffee maker didn't work for you in the morning. You had set the timer, you had put the coffee in and the water, and you got up and you're ready for that cup of coffee and it wasn't there. So you're using your knowledge about what should have happened in that system and about the technology, and you're going to go kind of problem solve to find out what that is. So I would like you, if you can, to find a piece of paper. And what I would like you to do, let's see. Lisa, can you see what's, there we go. Sorry, it's not moving to the next page. Hold on just a sec.
Sure.
Please take out a piece of paper. We're going to have a little bit of fun. And what I would like you to do, if you can't get in too much trouble where you are, is to go ahead and create an airplane, a paper airplane. So what you're going to be doing is, this is a simple paper airplane that I have up there. So you take a piece of paper, you're going to fold it lengthwise in half, then you're going to fold the two corners down. And just practice this in your mind if you can't actually find a piece of paper and fly airplanes where you currently are working. And so take down the triangle tips on each side, fold one over one way and one the other, and then go ahead and fold that triangular piece and the longer piece down again. And so you'll have a very simple airplane at the end. So take a few moments to think about what you're doing with that and create your paper airplane. And again, you could do this visually. You, I'm sure, have seen paper airplanes, and this is something that can be done over and over again with young children. They just love to have paper airplanes that are going on. As you're making that paper airplane, I also want you to think about different math and science words. So think about the shape, think about number, think about technology, think about any type of math or science word that you are using or you are thinking of as you're doing it. And you can start texting those to Lisa.
Yeah, so
And we don't want you to be thinking this way, okay?
Yep, so go ahead and you can type in the words that come to you in the question box, and then I can relay those to Fran.
Okay, great, thanks. So we don't want you to have this feeling. You know shapes, you know math, you're going to be doing math. So go ahead and finish that airplane. So next, what I would like you to do is go ahead and fly that airplane, either visually in your mind, or if you're not going to get in trouble, send it across the office. So give it a shoot and see what happens. And then start, again, thinking about the words that you use and send them into Lisa. Are you getting any, Lisa?
Yeah, so far I've got from Rebecca, equality, measurement.
Ooh, great. So type some more into those questions.
Lift is another one.
Mm-hmm. And think about shapes and numbers, the numbers of folds.
Desiree sends in diversity. Oh, I'm getting lots now. Great, yay! Precision, triangles, fast, aerodynamics.
Ooh. So all those words are math and science words. All those words help you and a child know that you are doing math and science, that you are scientists, that you are mathematicians. So you have some longer words that kids maybe don't know, or you might have a shorter word that's a little bit different, like lift. So that's something that you can start talking with children about in your vocabulary and in your play. And you want to use these words as often as possible and connect them to their everyday life too. Any more you want to call out there?
Sure. Let's see. Flow, flat, pointed.
Okay, so you have lots. So here are some others that I've gotten in different classes, and some that you have said in this class right now that I don't have on my list. So it's really can go on to infinity if you'd like to. So there's many different things, from a simple thing like making a paper airplane and flying it. And I highlighted or bolded a few words that might be a little bit different for the children. They might not think of arch in the terms of a flight pattern. And so you might be doing an arch when you're playing a game, if you're doing a song, or you might have an arch over in your block center. So if you happen to have done something with airplanes and wind and that sort of theme, and you did an arch, you can say, oh, an airplane arched. Well, here's a different type of arch. You're going to arch in your building. You're going to have an arch there. The other word is glide and stability. So is your plane stable? Is your block play stable? Is that plate on your lap stable? So you can keep using the different words in different contexts. I did miss one slide I was going to go back to, and this was just why we're talking about STEM and why it's so important. These are just a few articles that have been in the news recently. There was one I read a few months ago in Science News, which was really actually shocking because the scientist was thinking this was new. One, he was saying that preschoolers love science. Okay? I mean, how many of us know that? The other thing he was saying was that toddlers know words before they can speak, and that children can hear even when they're in the womb. So they were talking about things on and child care workers and known for years. But the importance of that is that it's really widespread, and that we're finding that more and more people are thinking about the birth to 5 years and how important they are. And they're also thinking about that in terms of math and science, because it really is critical that people, not only for schooling but just to function in society, have an understanding of basic science, math, and technology. There's also been many jobs that have gone unfulfilled because higher level students, even coming out of colleges, are not creative enough or thinking enough or have the right skills to go into the higher level jobs that pay really well. And they're looking at that we can start with our kids so that they don't ever have to feel this way. That math is fun, it is explorative, and we can all learn by having fun. So these were all of our math and science words. And here's just some of the things that you can pull out from, again, a simple lesson plan that you might have with your kids at the group and help parents and caregivers to go ahead and work with them. So there's many opposites. So again, with a lot of things that you do with science, things that you explore hands-on or things that you make, there are opposites involved. And so it's a way to start helping children understand the theme of opposites or that theory. So it's heavy and light, up and down, high and low, float and fall, and straight and curve. So again, these are all the opposites just in flying an airplane with the kids. The importance with our play groups is that we might do that at circle time, but then when you are modeling or working with parents as they're playing in the block area, or if the aunt is drawing with, you might want to think about the words that you learned from your circle time. So you might be talking about heavy and light, and over at the art table you have heavy and light paper, or you have a feather and you go, oh, is this heavy or is this light? So you want to use whatever you do at your circle time, or you might have a little science table, and make sure that you're talking about that throughout the time that you're with the child and connecting it with something that they might have known as well. So if you know that they went on a trip, you might want to talk to them about the roads that they took. Were they straight or were they curvy? So you can somehow connect with the child's home life as well. Here are some science and math words that we did pick out. Some of those I heard you say or type into Lisa. And what I have in the kind of pinkish box is talking about increasing vocabulary from infants on up, so you can still talk in different ways with a young child even though they might not respond verbally. So we have what's called different people call it a penny, nickel, quarter word. These are called, for me, they're cupcake words or salad plate words or the dinner plate words. So the easiest words or something that a child might know would be, oh, the plane goes, it goes. And then the middle-sized word or the salad plate word would be flies. And then the new word or the dinner-sized plate would be glides. So that's a word that they might not know or might not have heard. And you might have said that word but not explained what it is. So working with parents and family to go ahead and explain, what does glide means? What does that mean? And then the next set I have is bend, fold, and crease. And so again, crease is the more difficult word or the more uncommon word that the child might learn. Slow, crawl, and leisurely. And then you have light, lightweight, ultralight. And then move, speed, and velocity. And we know our preschoolers, or even some of our, they say words like velocity. So you can have them running around in the classroom, and you can even say, oh, slow down, you know, we don't want too much velocity in here. And so they'll start to learn it in a very personal way, what the different words are. And they really do love to learn new words. And some of these words you might not, I found some of the kids come up with words that I can't spell right away. Some of the words that they come up with, I go get the dictionary or I let them know that I'm going to look that up. So we don't want to limit something that they might have heard because it's a little bit embarrassing that it was hard to spell that word in class. So I just go ahead and get the dictionary and bring it back to them. So math schools, there's been a lot of articles, and again I did highlight some of those, and they really want parents to help and family members to help children develop their minds. And we found that the more vocabulary that a child hears, the more that their brain is developing, and the next time that they hear that word, it'll be stronger, they'll have more understanding for it. And they're also seeing that many people don't have the math skills, not again, to be an engineer, though we hope some of our kids will go on to become engineers and great problem solvers in that way. And other people are going to run their business, or they're going to take care of their home, and they need some basic math skills. And some of this is being lost when it's not introduced early enough. So what they're doing is just have different studies. Again, I feel like I'm preaching to the choir. We know that our kids need this type of attention, and that's why we have our play groups from birth to 5. But there are some studies that are out there. And I know I listened to the legislature last year, and they were talking about, again, they could not fill the computer jobs, the technology jobs that they wanted, both in the private sector and in the military. And so they were very concerned about why children, even though they got high scores and went through high school, weren't coming out of college with the skills that they needed. Also, a professor was talking about, he used to teach at the master's and PhD level, and he quit. And he went back to middle school. And he was saying that he did this because he found that his students at the higher levels, even though they had all the information, were not creative. They just wanted the answer. They had already been stunted in their growth. They didn't know how to play. And so he went back to middle school and brought games and science and math in a fun way. And we know with our kids from birth to 5, they have fun. They have fun with math. They have fun with games. They have fun with science, and they just love it. So he went back because he wanted to get the kids earlier. So he was working with middle schoolers so that they had that creativity to be our problem solvers. Oops. So why before 5 and why infants 2? We know that parents and caregivers are the first and the best teachers for our children. We also know that it's natural. They're explorers. You know how they'll touch like a dead bird if they find it outside? You know, they're curious. They're just ready to go. And of course, we don't want them to touch dead animals outside, but we don't want to crush that creativity. We want to find other safe ways for them to explore that. And they have a readiness to repeat actions that have interesting effects. I mean, we all know this about the child in the high chair. You know, just dropping the Cheerios over the side or dropping their cups over the side. They're just interested in both your reaction to it and also that it goes down, that it's in front of them, they drop it, and it disappears. So they really have a natural desire and love, and just, we don't want to quelch that. We want to add to it. We want to keep them exploring and make sense of the natural world. And again, we want to remember that we want to speak a lot with our children, because even though they're not verbal yet, they're still hearing the language and they're still able to understand and start to comprehend many things before they can speak it. So children explore math and science with their whole bodies. You know, they do spatial geometry in any game that they play, and this one has soccer. And then they're natural earth scientists. They just love to explore. And you know how they love the water table and the measures and the weights. So they're natural explorers, and we're just helping to give families tools to continue this. And to also give them the permission to have fun. A lot of times there's so much pressure to get your child ready for school that they begin the numbers or the naming of objects without allowing the child to have fun. Eventually they will have to learn the names of letters and numbers and be able to count and know all their colors. But if we're always only asking what's called a closed-ended question, you know, how many's there, or what color is that, what's this number, let's count to 5. They're going to do that for a while because they want to please you and they want to learn, but it's going to become old. And then when it gets harder, they won't have fun trying to problem solve and try to get through that hardness. They'll just kind of get stuck. So we understand families' pressures with society, that they really want them to be school ready, and we also want to help them know what they already know, that children love to play and that they learn through play. And Kaleidoscope is all about that. So Kaleidoscope Play and Learn, and I'm not sure if Lisa might step in for some of this, but I believe that there's 6 lessons, and there will be more in the early STEM guide. And each lesson has the following components: the learning objectives and key messages and group activity suggestions, and then a resource selection. I know that Lisa's going to be developing or is going to have some other lesson plans developed. But I know there's one that called What Happens When, and so that is part of STEM. What happens when? What happens when we do this? What do you think might happen when we do this? So lots of open-ended questions and a lot of fun with play. Lisa, do you want to talk anything more about Kaleidoscope Play and Learn lessons?
Sure. And those new lesson guides, excuse me, as Fran mentioned, there's about 5 new ones that are going to be available on math and science related, and sort of that exploration that children do, and encouraging that. And those will be available as soon as you start renewing your affiliate agreements. You'll get a brand new toolkit. So for organizations that have that coming up soon, you'll get those soon. Yep, thanks for the promo there. And if you're really dying for them sooner, let me know. Just email me and I can email you whatever you need. And some of your folks out there, I know you have them already, those that are with the Highline School District or Seattle Public Schools. So we developed those especially for those school districts, but we're making them available to everybody.
Oh, that's great. And what I love about the Kaleidoscope Play and Learn is that they really emphasize the play and, of course, the connection to home and to culture. So they do a great job with having STEM activities that are playful and fun, and both the facilitators and the families can have fun doing STEM activities. So I would like to think a little bit, or have you think a little bit, about books that you like. Because a lot of times for my STEM activity, since I love books, I go ahead and start with a book, and then that leads me into STEM activities. So think for a moment about some of the books that you love. There might be some here. So you can see that these can jump off to a science and math type of experiment. So you have Mouse Paint. So Mouse Paint is a lot about colors and about what happens when color is saturated, or what happens when you do color blending. And then it also has a mouse in it, so you can just go all off into think about mice. And then from there, I know one class was talking about mice traps, so technology can be fit in there. So just begin to think about that as you prepare your literature and your lessons. I love Bear in a Square. We do so much on that, and so my lesson plan includes the story and shapes, and we make different shape pictures, and then of course we have the blocks out there. And it looked like spilt milk. You can talk about clouds and weather, so you can see where I'm going with that. And I'm sure you have some of your favorites too. And then there's one there about vegetables. So I'd like you to think for a minute, and then if you could type into Lisa in those question area, where do you have math and science activities for your group? So think about your Play and Learn group and think about what you set up, and we'll take a couple minutes here and just think about where do you have it set up. And then type some of that in for Lisa, and she'll read it out for us.
And thanks, folks, too. I know there is a bit of a delay here with the slides showing, and we get that sometimes even with the audio as well as the visual part of the webinar, so appreciate your patience in that. And it's just...
Should I go a little slower in my talking, Lisa?
No,
so it catches up?
No, I think you're good. You're good. It's sort of inconsistent the way the timing is coming with. I can tell where you're changing slides by what you're talking about, but
Okay.
Don't worry about it. It'll catch up. So we're getting some responses to your question about the activities of science and math in groups, elements from nature, magnifying glass, measuring and sensory table activities, blocks, sand table, water activity corner, in centers, math, blocks, stories, finger plays. Oh, and a question here. I'll go through some of these first and I'll get back to the question. Different stations, for example, the art table, blocks, fine motor table, magnets, water droppers, measurement. I incorporated combining colors to make new colors in circle time last week. I had the kids form a hypothesis about what new color would be created. This week we're exploring sensory bottles with a mix of water, glitter, and oil. Pizza cutting and sharing. When having storytelling in Cooking Center, cutting shapes and lines, and alpha books. And then let's see, planting seeds, learning about growth.
That's just great. I love you guys. Those are just all those wonderful ideas that we can be reminded again to do in our own groups and just share. That's just a wealth of information. Did you have a question, or should I move on?
Nope, it looks like you can move on. I think got answered, so.
Okay. Okay, well that is just so exciting. So the point of that thinking and those questions were just to, again, point out that you are doing STEM activities and that you're just have them all over your playroom. And also that we're going to be a little bit more intentional about what we're doing with the kids too. So that's with the talking. So there's some answers that we heard, the science table. Some people still are doing a calendar. There's books, math toys. And blocks is probably the single most thing, if you can only have one thing with math and science, is to go ahead and have your blocks and do a lot of discussion as you're building and talking with parents and families with the blocks. So talking, you know, there's lots of things that the kids bring in, even if talking about when they were sick or if a baby was born. I mean, all of this has to do with science and math. And then sorting, we heard about that. There's tons of sorting toys that can be make and take and just use. Sensory table, snack, we heard about people making pizza. I love that. So, you know, making it and cutting it not only into the triangle shape, but you can do other shapes that you cut. Also, there's a lot of scientific processes, of course, that happens when you're turning, you know, flour and salt and water and oil into Play-Doh. So you can look up a little bit about that and talk about it, or just let them know that this is a scientific process, and it is science, and it is something that's repeatable. And I just made Play-Doh the other day, and one batch came out all sticky, you know, and I swear I measured each one the same way. And so we talked about what happened. Why might this one have been sticky? And it was a different color, so possibly something in the coloring. We used liquid watercolors for the green, whereas we were using something else for the other colors. So possibly that little bit of liquid in the water. And then we problem solved a little bit with the older kids about what can we do with the sticky Play-Doh besides throw it out. So we brought out the flour and added more and got some good use out of it. So there's family handouts. You want to, again, extend it to families, stacking toys, games. I know that's more so for older children, but there are some good games out there, and people had mentioned art. And then just looking out the window, especially with babies, and just, you know, showing them what is out there and talking about nature. Again, it's a lot of talking. So as you guys were saying, it's everywhere. It's everywhere in your groups. So these are, again, some other toys that we have, and there's a lot of fine motor. People were talking about using the eyedroppers and other things at their sensory table. So it's really whole body learning, of course. And you want to think about your environment. You want to think about what you have in your environment in terms of nature pictures. You want to make sure that you have some real pictures in there, not only picture books, but actually pictures that you've taken outside or from magazines that show nature as you would see them with a camera. And then also class is what we'll be talking about. That's another measurement tool, but that they're using in the child care and with the Early Achievers program. But it's also has a lot of wealth of information about talking with parents and talking with kids. So we'll talk a little bit about it. So book talk, these were some of my favorite books, and I know you have, I'm sure, some of your own, but I have some different projects if people have questions or need to see them. I do lots of things with these books all the time in math and science. And then we want to think about all the books that we use, and here's some more. And then this was just a lesson on spiders. I do a lot with spiders, and this has the yarn for the sensory. We have scissors to cut. We also I do catch real spider webs and on black paper, and then I put a little bit of flour on them and then bring them into the class, and it really shows up. It's really gorgeous. If you can go outside with kids, they can do this on their own. And this has books that show real spiders and books that have stories, and of course there's a nice finger play with it. The spider web itself has some counting, and then there's some stamping that can go with it. So again, I just take a book and really run with it with the theme. And then it's important that you also have nonfiction books, maybe not storybooks that you'll be reading, but a couple in your basket that you have there. Books that are reference books, because children really almost in kindergarten, definitely in first and second grade, they're going to get books like that book up in the corner called Inquiry, and those are textbooks. They are not storybooks, and they're going to be asked to look up something in that type of book. And so again, it's just another way for children to get used to a dictionary or an encyclopedia or a book that's nonfiction and doesn't necessarily have a story but has lots of pictures and words. Again, it's just to help them get used to that. So don't forget in your centers or in your basket books in there too. So we're going to talk a little bit about some questions that were adapted from Early Achievers to promote flexible thinking. So again, it's something called the open-ended questions. So you're going to think about the pros and cons. You know, what's going to happen if we add the whole tub of flour to that Play-Doh, you know, and let them do that on a piece. And one child did, and of course it came out very dry and very crumbly and wasn't as much fun. So there was pros and cons. The pro was that he wanted to know what was going to happen, so that was very positive. The cons was that, well, we might have to throw out that batch of Play-Doh. But he learned a lot, and we talked about it. So think about with building blocks or other things, what's the pros and cons of that? You know, should we add another block? What should we do? Exploration examples, you want to ask questions like, in what ways do you think that's the same? Or in what ways have you used some connection? And then what does it look like? So you're going to have them describe. You want them to describe their experiments, describe their pizza cooking, describe what they're trying to tell you. And my favorite question is, what might happen if? So what might happen if we add another block? What might happen if we go outside right now and it happens to be raining? And then the other one is, tell me about. So they're open-ended questions, questions that the children can stop and think. And even when I talk to a nonverbal child, I'll go, what might happen? You know, and I could see that they stop for a moment with their block play, let's say, and think about it. And that pause is really important. They're learning self-regulation, and I can see this in a young nonverbal child. And so then I might give them so they put down. I said, oh, what might happen if we put another block? Well, it looks like it was too tall and uneven, and it fell. What can we do next? What do you think would make it more stable? So even though this child's not going to respond or answer to me verbally, I can give them words for their play. So it's another way of thinking and talking with children. Someone had mentioned a magnifying glass, and I love the magnifying glass. It's fun to play with. The other tool I use is a fake magnifying glass. And the reason for this is that a real magnifier is kind of hard. You have to get it stable. You can't have your eyes or your hand shaking or a kid bump into you. It's very hard to focus. So with a fake magnifier that you cut out the center of the circle, it's kind of like squinting. I can't always see very well without my glasses, so I squint to see across the room. So it brings my vision in. So with children, they can look at objects at your science table or art table with this pretend magnifier. So they are focusing their whole body and their whole attention right in that circle. So from there, you can have them look at a leaf and they can describe it. And it's really easier to see than with a big magnifier, because it's hard to use a magnifier and have it stable. So using the paper magnifier really helps them focus in on that. One thing that we do is we have our science objects, like people were saying that they do in their class, and we get out the magnifier, and one child will look at it and say one attribute of the object. So they might look at the leaf and say it's brown. And then the next person will repeat what that person says. Oh, it's brown, and I see that it has little orange flecks in it. And then someone else might say, oh, it's brown and orange flecks, and it has triangles at the tip of the leaves. And so you go around the table a little bit like that, and they share what they're seeing. And you could also do this with toddlers and help them have their own thing as the other kids are doing this is more of a preschool activity. And then what's important after they've done that is that you have some crayons and paper at the table. You have crayons only in the color that represent that leaf that you brought in that day. So I might have the brown and the orange and the yellows out, maybe a little yellow. And then they are asked to draw that. So a lot with the scientific method is that you record what you're learning, that there's some recording that takes place. So one child might be able to get a shape of a leaf on there. Most children just scribble, and you let them know that you know that that's their leaf. So even though it doesn't look like a leaf, they know that that's a leaf because they leaf, They took the paper and they recorded it. So you really want to honor how they recorded that. Sometimes it can be done just verbally too, but I like to have the child go ahead and draw that picture. So the scientific method is basically like a hypothesis that someone was saying. That's one word I have trouble spelling. But you have a theory. You make a prediction. And then with that, you decide to experiment with that. You're going to go see if it's going to work. So you have a theory, you predict, you do an experiment, you observe it, and then you see what happens. We also would like to have, again, some recording of that. So they might say verbally it fell down. The other thing that's important with the scientific method is that it's repeatable. So if you attend the same way that you did it, you should get the same results. That's something that they're learning as they're doing this, that there's no way that if you have that small block on the bottom that it will hold more than 4 blocks, because you've tried it over and over again and it just doesn't happen. So then you can start going with, well, what happens if we put a larger block on the bottom and do this experiment? What will happen? So just have fun with playing with it, and that's kind of the scientific method. And then another important thing about science is to record it, is you want to help the child record what's happening and what they observed. Children can tell you what happened, that's recording, or they can scribble a picture like I was talking about with drawing the leaf that has meaning to them, or they can make a chart. And just have fun with this. So they'll get a lot more of this as they get older, but they can do a chart. We also have a counting game that we play. 2 colors of blocks in a in a tissue box, and they get to guess how many is going to come out, and so they draw a picture of how many they pulled out. So there might be 8 blocks in the tissue box, and there's 2 colors, and they get to pick only 5, and they make a prediction or a guess how many of each color they're going to get, and they go ahead and do that. Or there might be a scatter chart. This is how someone represented how many cars they had, and for him, or for her actually, this was a girl, that had meaning to her, and so you want to honor that so that they know that they can record their own experiments. So we want to talk with caregivers, and I have some handouts that Lisa will be sending too about different ways that they can incorporate math throughout their day. Again, you want to emphasize that math is for fun and not only for counting. Of course, you want to be sensitive because many people want their children to be able to count, of course, and to name things. But we also on that and make math a playful thing and to observe and to play with. Foster thinking skills. Again, it's the open-ended questions, and that's the model. You can go ahead and model that in your groups. You're going to observe and predict. You're going to have a list of questions you can give to caregivers, or you can just let parents know that you're doing an open-ended question. That's why you're asking this question. And then just try it, see what happens, ask them, what are you, make them feel comfortable that they could try things, that they don't have to be perfect, that it doesn't have to come exactly right. That will be later on when they're in a job, and of course you have to get the ingredients right if you're baking something that you're going to be selling or giving to people. But as children and as they begin to learn the scientific method and learn about science and math, that they're going ahead and give it a try. So what might happen? And then any way that you can talk connected to their life. So if you're talking about leaves, you might talk about fall and talk about if they ever heard the leaf when they go walking. Or again, as you get to know the families, you get to know what they're doing for the week that they're not with you, and you have some way of connecting that to their life. And a lot of times you know that if it's connected to their life, it's going to have more meaning in terms of learning. So block play is, again, the best thing to have for kids to learn all the math words. I mean, just imagine you have all the shapes that you have to learn. You have different things that happen as you're building. You have different numbers to do, and it's a lot of fun. You're also going to be talking about if you're building a house, you're going to put it between 2 things. You're going to put it beside something. You're going to put it on top. You're going to do 5 instead of 4. So there's so much rich vocabulary as you're describing your play. And parents love to do block building. It's a great joy for them. And so they're going to go ahead and do a lot of building because they automatically love to do that. Planks are a lot of fun. This dad is really having fun with that. I'm surprised that the little one didn't knock it yet, but she's doing a great job. Again, block play is always, it always seems that male relatives are really drawn to it. So moms and dads play, and then the dads definitely seem to be drawn into the block play. So here's some more block play that you see here. And then Play-Doh, someone has mentioned their sensory table, so Play-Doh with shapes. We were learning about construction time with this, and so we did a lot of shapes and sorting and a lot of building. And so again, if you, the way that you're talking about the shape and where it might be found in nature and how you made the Play-Doh, again, that's your science, technology, engineering, and math activities. So you are already using those. I'm not sure what that is. Hopefully nothing will happen. There we go. So shape sorting, everyone has been talking about that. Small motor, again, another way for a toddler, a young infant to start learning about shapes, and you can be talking with them about the shapes. So there's circles there, there's arches. You can talk about colors. You can talk about what happens when you pound one of those beads into another. And you can talk about that is a bead, it's also a circle, it's also wood. So a lot of attributes just from playing there. Stacking, this kid was amazing because those blocks are really small, and he just kept really focusing on stacking and would redo it if they fell down. So what I'd like to do now is again have you go ahead and think about this picture. Hopefully you can see it there. And think about what open-ended questions could you model for parents. So think about the activities that are there. We have a bead sorter, something with lace. We have music. We have books. We have blocks and numbers. So take a few moments and type into Lisa, what open-ended questions might you ask? So again, an open-ended question is something that doesn't necessarily have a one-word answer. It's something that the child would think a little bit deeper. So if you were there at the play group and we're going to do some modeling of questions, let me know what types of questions you might ask for that.
Okay. Excuse me, go ahead and type those questions in. And Colleen, you have a question too, and I'm sure other folks are thinking about it. Yes, we will send out a copy of the PowerPoint as well as some handouts that Fran mentioned. I'll email that to everybody on our distribution list as well as a link to the recorded webinar too. So if you want to look at it again or you want to pass it on to a colleague or nudge them to take a look, they are welcome to do so. So questions are coming in. Keep them rolling. Both open-ended questions that you would have for this situation as well as any questions you might have for Fran too. So we're getting some questions in here, Fran. Let's see, some open-ended questions. What might happen if you shake the instrument fast versus slow?
Oh, great.
How do the blocks feel? Can you move that instrument in different ways to make different sounds? What can you do with this instrument? What sounds do you hear?
Those are great questions, and it's something that, you know, once I started doing this in the last year and a half or so, I'm definitely incorporating and getting better at thinking of open-ended questions so that it doesn't feel like I'm forcing it. what you want to do is have a conversation with the child. So a lot of times we tend to do directional talk with children. So we are just having them, you know, go over there and wash your hands, or time to put your shoes on, or stop, or that sort of thing. Or we have questions that have, again, the one-word answers. So, but when we're talking back and forth with an adult, it's more of a conversation. So what you're trying to do is have a conversation that feels more natural, and you do get some great responses from kids. And you just want to play with it, and those are great questions. I love them, and you're just going to keep doing it. And then also the I wonder question is great. So. Or have them tell you about something too. So those are great. So books here, again, this is a number book. This is a way that they can talk about the pictures on the page and what they represent. So not only the one-to-one correspondence with the counting, which they'll begin to know, but also to talk about how those squiggles have meaning. So that is a representation. I think those were octopuses or monkeys, I can't tell from here, but it was a book that someone made these pictures kind of childlike so that they could say, yes, this is how I view that. And so kids can feel that they can do the same thing too. Shapes and counting nature. I know people talked a lot about what they brought into their science table. So again, they can look at the different shapes that they're seeing in nature, and you can point them out also and talk about color and of course the counting and the changes, and then of course you can go into the whole fall theme, which is just rich with science and engineering about tools that we use. Don't forget that a rake is a tool. It was something that someone created because they wanted a better and more efficient way to rake up those leaves. So they went ahead, and there's been different styles of rakes. So think about that. This is the level where children really are looking at tools, and they use tools from an egg beater to maybe a shovel. You know, someone had to invent that. Someone had to think, this is a problem I have. How can I make this better? And they had to experiment with different materials and different pressure, and they had to go ahead and do that. So you're not only building with blocks, but you're building relationships. So these conversations are really helping parents find other ways to connect with their children. And we're always modeling, of course, in our play groups, that the importance is not necessarily what toys you have or how entertained your child is, but that you're working with them. A lot of times I'm a little bit more concerned because so many children are quiet when they have electronic toys, and I hate to see that with children, you know, definitely birth to 3. So they're not bugging for attention, and they're not even unsafe because they're not moving. So it's really important to think about what others have with children, and that we really want to encourage that, and that's how we build relationships. So math is shapes, it's sorting, it's counting. So just think about a little bit expanded definition of math. It's not only learning the counting or the root counting, but actually having fun with it. This is a little plug for Blockfest Washington. I know we have it here in Thurston County, where we can rent a huge amount of different blocks and have a family event. So it can fill up a whole gym. You need quite a few volunteers, but they bring all sorts of blocks in, and I think that might be available in other areas as well. And then these are some sorting toys and learning about shapes that are easy and simple and inexpensive. So there is painting with a container. So lots of circles and lots of colors you can add to it. And then people had made shape sorters out of different types of containers. So this is something that you can show during your session, and you can also help parents do it at home. And then I like the paper or the clothespins. This is for older children. So they're getting a lot of fine motor skills as they match up the shapes with the clothespins. But again, that would be for an older child because they're tiny pieces. And then egg cartons. I love egg cartons. I can do a million things with egg cartons. So just think of sorting, and again, these are materials that are easy to find, and families can be encouraged to do so at home. So any questions that we had, Lisa? And then I was going to go over some of the handouts maybe.
Sure, go ahead and type in any questions you might have for Fran or any ideas of how you incorporate science and math learning into your groups too. And maybe some aha moments too where you didn't even know that you were already doing science and math.
I think that happens a lot, that people are afraid that it's a little bit more advanced than it really is. It can be advanced. You can do robotics. You can do lots of fun, great things with circuits and robotics and color. But at the same time, the children are learning math in your everyday activities that you're doing with them. I'm going to see if I can maybe get to the handouts too.
Sure.
You can know what's coming.
Yeah, and go ahead, folks, if you have questions or any comments or suggestions for others, please go ahead and type those in. And I do have a comment and a request. I believe this is way harder than I thought. Any resources with lists of open-ended questions to hang in the room to get us started would be great. So I think it's about open-ended questions. My parents have had a hard time.
Yes.
And I don't blame them. I do too. I know, I do too sometimes. And, you know, actually,
Yes.
as I've been going to a lot of groups recently, I have actually been thinking about that too, is a resource in our caregiver learning toolkits is maybe making up a list of some very simple open-ended questions that could be used in different kinds of play areas. Doesn't necessarily just have to be with blocks or other things. I mean, even just in pretend play or puzzles or whatever we happen to be doing with children. So I will work on that, and I am thinking if, you know, I always have like a little wish list, so if we have a little flurry of cash or money or services that come our way, I always like to spend it towards translation, so I will put that out there to the universe. And maybe you all, if you want to help me translate or even come up with some questions. So I think it would be great. And then you could just pull from those and post them up in your groups as a way to prompt caregivers about how to engage with children in that manner. So thank you for
And there is a
that.
list. There is a list of open-ended questions, though it's only in English, that people can use. And it is hard to think about at first because you're so used to the other way. But once you start doing it and playing with it, it really isn't hard. So I really want you to rest assured that you do already do it. It's just you're going to be more conscious of it. And anything that you're more conscious of, you know, you do worse at first, okay? So if you're trying to even learning to ride a bike or something and you're being watched or you're really conscious of it that you do naturally, unconsciously, that you're going to maybe be worse at first. So give yourself time. It's play. The kids are forgiving. You're not going to hurt them with the wrong question. So just definitely have fun with it. The handout that's up now is one that you'll get from a book that's STEM activities. I don't have the title right in front of me, which I love. And it talks about the questions, you know. So this was adding to your block center. All they did is added material and cardboard. So they were adding different materials. So it wasn't just the sponge blocks, but it was actually things that bend and fold and not as strong. So they talked about flexibility. So the different open-ended question was, which material bends? You know, can you use it to put a curved roof on your barn? So it's just different questions like that. So this is one of my favorite books, and you'll get it in the handouts too. Oh, and then I think I had open-ended questions. I'm not sure.
Oh, I can see it on your screen there. Yeah.
There it is. You just go ahead, already asking them, you know, how did that happen? A lot of times we do it with social emotional when someone's crying. It's like, oh, you got hurt. Well, how did that happen? Those are science questions. Those are open-ended questions. It's cause and effect. So don't sell yourselves short there. And so that's one handout. And then I always look at the early learning guidelines. So let's see if this is one of them. So this is Washington State Early Learning and Development Guidelines. So they talk about what they hope for the whole state from birth to 12 months and on, you know, what they hope that children might learn. So if you don't have a copy of that, you can get it from the Department of Early Learning, and they do have it in at least 2 languages. I'm not sure if it's in others, but it's just ways to think about math if you want to think more about it. But again, don't stress over it. You're doing good. So what else do I have here? So these will be handouts that you'll get. So those will be some of the handouts that will come to you, open-ended questions, and then a whole list of activities that you can go ahead and give to families. And this is resources from the Center of Childhood Disease Center. Anyway, CDC, they have growth charts, and they have them in many languages, which is fun. And they're free. You can order some growth charts, so they measure the children at growing. And so that's one way to talk about measurement and talk about the numbers on there and talk about the tools of measurement. You could bring in rulers that day or yardsticks or use your feet. So different activities that you can do around the growth charts and how they're growing. So that's a fun resource. And then, oh, here's the book that I was talking about, Teaching STEM in the Early Years. This is geared towards preschool age, but there's some activities that you incorporate with your toddlers as well. And then there's a great librarian who's doing S.T.E.M, and so she has a blog. So if you can get on the computer and go to that site, she's a librarian, and she's brought all these activities into her library, and she just has great and fun things to do. And then Blockfest is one of the ones that I talked about here too. And then these are some of the lessons plans coming soon. And again, even though it might be new to you, you're already doing it. I'm sure if I followed you around in your group, I would say, oh, that's an open-ended question, and you don't even know that you're doing it. Or I could say, yes, that you're incorporating all the science and math into your activity. So that's all I had. It doesn't go all the way to 3:30, but that's what I have today. And I can answer any questions or talk more about it or...
Sure. Thank you, Fran. Yes, please type any questions that you might have into the question box, or any comments, ideas, suggestions.
It's different for me doing a webinar. Usually the class would have some hands-on activities, and I feel that people begin to feel more comfortable when they have the hands-on activities, because then they can already know what they're doing, and you know, they say, oh yeah, we do this, here's my science table, and oh yes, I talked to parents about that. So
Fran, in a in-person training, what are some of the activities that you might do with the folks that attend? Maybe people who are listening in would want to just try it out on their own and what to look for, or even have their caregivers participate in a few things like that too.
It's amazing, even though I'm sure you probably do it, to set it up a little bit more intentionally, and that's the sink and float activity. You're always playing with water, and adults and children just love this. But the added component that I add is to guess and to have some paper where you're actually writing down, do you think this object will sink, or do you think it will float? Or you can have 2 baskets, one for sink and one for already do some of this. But again, what makes it more intentional is that you're going to have different activities that go with sink and float. So you're going to talk about it a little bit more. You're going to record it. So that's one that people really love. And then we do a lot with butterflies and color. So we do a lot of color blending and add a lot of artistic elements to that. And we also talk about why and which spectrum of the rainbow are these colors coming from. So it's just, again, a little bit more intentional. We were all organized to record it, to go ahead and experiment with it, and also to talk about those words again. So you might have a paper that's wet, and you might talk about saturation. So that's a new word that they're learning. Or just the concept of wet. What is the concept of wet? It's no longer dry. Well, why is that? Well, the fibers have sucked in the color. So again, you want to be a little bit more intentional with the words that you use. Another one we do for old kids is an eraser test. So they're going to predict which eraser will work the best. And this is a cute one. And a lot of kids will say, well, the blue one, or the purple one, or the pink one. They're going by color. And so you ask, well, I wonder, why do you think the pink will be? Well, I love pink. So that's kind of where they're at in their minds, and that's fine too. And so you just go ahead and you test them and you see what happens. And again, they're recording this. So they have a sheet of paper and they're going to glue a likeness of that eraser on the best one and the medium one and the poor one. So it's just a way of doing a simple type of test. Cooking, cooking is always great. Any sort of making, baking, you're also going to talk about the technology that you use. So someone had to engineer, again, that egg beater or that spatula, and you could bring in a bunch of different spatulas and see which works and which spoons, even a spoon. They're always trying to improve on the spoon. So this is part of science, technology, engineering, and math, so you can incorporate that. So that's a few of the activities that we do. We do a lot about the different size words, the cupcake, salad, and dinner words. So just to try to incorporate new vocabulary into their work. And then with the older groups, we do play games. So there's checkers. Another favorite of mine is called Set. And then there's Quirkle. And then there's blocks that you can make into different diagrams. So definitely a lot of block play and a lot of games, so that's incorporated in there too. But I know it's a real release to not just have the lecture and they get to go and do a make and take project and talk among their peers about the different words that they would use. Also, there's some words that are different, of course, in each culture, so they have to find the understanding or the way to use those words for their family's languages too.
Great. Those are wonderful ideas. Thank you so much, Fran. And any last thoughts or questions folks might have? Dereche says, thank you. It was so wonderful. Are you going to give us handouts via our email addresses? Yep. I'll send those out tomorrow along with the link to the recording of the webinar too. So for folks that missed it as well. Any other questions?
I just want to make sure people have fun, that this is fun, and that's what exploration is all about. We love, feeling the sun or seeing a cloud, and so just go with that feeling and then add a few more vocabulary words to it, a few more I wonder about it, and you have STEM in your classroom.
Great. Thank you so much, Fran. There are words of thanks that are trickling in here. No questions, but lots of gratitude and thank you. So really appreciate your taking the time to do this presentation and to share your vast knowledge and just your really wonderful creativity and positive attitude towards it, too. It really makes it feel doable. And I wish I had a play and learn group to facilitate to try this out too. So watch out if I come to visit your group. I'm working on this myself. So yes, many thanks. And again, I'll send out an email with the handouts and the PowerPoint for folks so you can copy those for yourselves. And there is another question about links to previous webinars, and yes, I'm working on that, and I'll send those out periodically, but I'm also working on getting them uploaded to YouTube, so you don't actually need a link back to go to. So I will keep you posted as to when I get that piece of technology worked out. And then also to let you know, I am working on a Pinterest page, and this is an idea I stole from lots of you who I knew were looking at Pinterest for ideas for activities for your groups. So I've just really got sort of a skeleton of a page, but I'll be sending out a link to that shortly, and I would love any of your ideas to populate into that so that we can just share ideas. And again, my emphasis on the ideas for Pinterest activities is going to be really based upon things that people can do at home, because I think there's lots of information out there about ways that you can support fine motor with this particular toy or this particular kind of classroom activity, but really trying to incorporate things into your group that uses low cost or no cost materials, because I know that groups are on a budget as well as families. So I'm really excited to get that out, and oh my goodness, I had no idea what a world was out there in Pinterest. Lots of people with lots of creativity, way more than me. So, but anyway, thank you so much again for attending the webinar, and thank you again to Fran. A round of applause. Appreciate it. So we'll be hearing from us again soon, and I'll be getting word out. We'll have a couple more webinars probably coming in the fall, and if you have ideas for topics, do let me know. So thanks so much, and take care, everybody.